My pleasure. Congratulations.
She's good.
Look alive.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Ellensburg City Council meeting of September 18th. This is our regularly scheduled meeting. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Nguyen? Thank you. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Beauchamp,
Here.
Elliott.
Here.
Goodlow. Here. Lilquist.
Here.
David Miller.
Here.
Monica Miller. Here. Wynn.
Here.
Okay. First order of business is we have two proclamations this evening. The first is celebrating National Voter Registration Day. We have a guest from the League of Women Voters to read, Nancy Weeking.
Thank you, Nancy. Nancy Weeking, 702 East Third. And I am a member of League of Women Voters, Kittitas County, and I will read the proclamation celebrating good citizenship on National Voter Registration Day tomorrow. Whereas voting is the foremost right and responsibility of citizens of the United States, whereas active and engaged citizens, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or political affiliation, are the foundation of democracy. And whereas for any democracy to work, all eligible citizens must be able to vote for their representatives without barriers in free and fair elections. And whereas the hallmark of good citizenship is community participation, including informed voting in every election in which a ballot is received. And whereas good citizenship includes respecting other points of view, keeping an open mind, and taking care of one another and the environment that sustains us. And whereas a thriving democracy includes governments that are open, transparent, inclusive, and equitable. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on September 19th, National Voter Registration Day, citizens are encouraged to remind friends and family to always be vote ready. Like, do you read?
Yes, keep reading.
We join
Last
Kittitas.
sentence.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
You go ahead with the
We
last
join the Kittitas County League of Women Voters in reminding citizens to check their voter registration at votewa.gov to ensure that they are ready and able to vote in the upcoming election. Signed this the 18th day of September.
Thank you.
And Nancy asked me to expand a little about what League does, and I will. With this statement from our president, the League of Women Voters envisions a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. To that end, we encourage every citizen to register to vote at votewa.gov and to make a voting plan for the upcoming election in November. Nonpartisan voting information can be found at vote411.org and on our website at kittitasleague.org, where our local online voters guide will go live October 16th. We will be participating in tomorrow, Bite of the Berg, and we'll be up at Brooks Library registering students. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next, well, is there any public comment on that proclamation. Next proclamation is Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month, 2023. Is Monica Castellan here? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Monica Castellan. I work as a nonprofit consultant for Apoyo, and I will be reading the proclamations. For Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month 2023. Latinos driving prosperity, power, and progress in America. Whereas the Ellensburg City Council is committed to creating a community of belonging that improves the quality of life for all persons we serve. And whereas Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the Hispanic and Latinx histories, cultures, and contributions of those whose ancestors were indigenous to North America, as well as Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas what began in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon Johnson and expanded by President Ronald Reagan to cover a 30-day period starting September 15th of each year, the United States annually observes Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month. And whereas the purpose of Hispanic Heritage Month is to create awareness of the contributions of people of Latinx and Hispanic people's heritage to American society, and recognize the civil rights leaders, community organizers, politicians, teachers, journalists, first responders, artists, healthcare professionals, athletes, inventors, entertainers with Latinx and Hispanic heritage. And whereas our Hispanic and Latinx community represents over 10% of the population of Ellensburg and provides a diverse cultural heritage that enriches the political, economic, and social growth of our community. And whereas the City Council encourages all members of our community to recognize and celebrate the accomplishments and contributions of these Hispanic and Latinx Americans, and to celebrate this rich culture with events, educational opportunities, language classes, and traditional Hispanic and Latinx foods. Now therefore, the City Council of Ellensburg does hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th, 2023 as a Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month, signed this 18th day of September. I
Thank
will
you.
read them in Spanish.
Just for time, can we not, we will publicize it in both
Okay.
languages.
Sounds good.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for reading, Monica. Is there any public comment on this proclamation? Thank you. Council, we are at awards and recognitions, and we have two items. The Checkerboard Partnership is here to update us on their activities. Mitch or Nikki, would you? And I think Drew is coming up to help you get your presentation loaded. Drew, do you want to screen share? I've been waiting a while for that one.
Darren's gonna have fun with that.
All right, thank you. My name is Mitch Long and I work with Kittitas Conservation Trust.
Mitch, if you could talk into the microphone because it is on TV.
Okay, yeah.
And
So my name is Mitch Long. I'm the Executive Director of Kittitas Conservation Trust. We're a local land trust that works in the Upper Yakima Basin, and with me is
I'm Nikki Pazzi. I'm with the Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust. We're a nonprofit operating between Seattle and Ellensburg along the I-90 corridor within the boundary of Greenway National Heritage Area.
Yeah, so today we're here to talk about the Clay Elm Ridge Community Forest and some of the other efforts that the Checkerboard Partnership has been working on in collaboration with the Nature Conservancy and other partners. So Were you doing this one?
Nope.
Okay, the Checkerboard Partnership, we're a group that has come together to help with the disposition of lands that were purchased by a conservation investor that with lands owned that were previously owned by Plum Creek. It was about 50,000 acres of land within Kittitas County. It was also a part of a deal for 100,000 acres in Montana. And so we got together when there was about 27,000 of those acres to try to determine, what is the best disposition for that land and how do we develop a working community forest model that works with our community. So it included nonprofit groups like KCT and Mountains of Sound Greenway, local elected officials from the various municipalities, county commissioners, as well as just landowners in general that were interested in the landscape and what was going to happen with that landscape. So this is a map of the land. So all of those green squares, either filled in or not, were a part of that Plum Creek acquisition. Those squares that are not filled in were lands that were previously purchased with grant funding, working with the Nature Conservancy, primarily Land Water Conservation Fund dollars that allowed those lands to be transferred to the U.S. Forest Service, because those were sections of land that were in private ownership through the land grant era back in the early development of the railroad. And so what we're looking for was that permanent protection. So when TNC found out that Plum Creek wanted to buy the land, they didn't have the money to buy 150,000 acres across 2 states, but they got together a group of conservation investors called Central Cascade Forest LLC to bring together the capital to purchase the land and to push pause on the what that potential disposition of that land could be, with the intent of finding the right conservation outcome for them. And primarily what we're trying to do with the Checkerboard Challenge is to eliminate that checkerboard pattern of ownership, to make it easier for land managers for various reasons, from forest health, watershed health, and recreation. And so we got together as a group, it was pre-COVID, so probably 4.5, 5 years ago, to look at those 27,000 acres, which is primarily those green squares that were filled in.
So as you can notice from the map, the landscape or the acreage itself is spread across 3 different landscapes, all of which are managed very differently and are used for different purposes. So it's kind of tricky to bring forward a plan for 3 such disparate areas. But over the past 5 or so years, we've actually managed to divest a good chunk of this, about 2/3 of it. So for instance, up in Cabin Creek is a wetter landscape. It is, of those 3 sections, by far the most commercially valuable. It grows more timber and it grows it more quickly than the other 2 areas. So using Forest Legacy Program funding, we have been able to turn this over to the Department of Natural Resources. And this is, well, once it closes, will be managed in trust for Kittitas County, so that a portion of timber sales coming off of that land is held by the county to be used for lands maintenance, recreational projects, and other projects as deemed fit by the county. So this has been a really cool project where we leveraged grant money to be able to provide a resource, not just for the Department of Natural Resources and to provide them with a more contiguous landscape to manage, but also for the county itself. Down in the Tainum, it's a drier forest area, so not as much timber production, but it is highly valued by the local motorized community for recreation. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a mess because of that checkerboard pattern. It's hard to build a trail when every other square mile is privately owned or maybe in somebody else's ownership. So we've been working for several years now to acquire Land and Water Conservation Fund money. That's a federal fund that is funded by a portion of the proceeds from oil, natural resources sales. So this money and this project was actually ranked #1 in the country last year through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And we are just waiting on the federal budget to be decided for this year to move ahead with fully dispersing it to the Forest Service. And then the Cle Elum Ridge is the piece that we're most here to speak with you about. This is kind of the last piece of the puzzle. In looking at ownership and looking at, should it be divested to DNR, to the Forest Service, to some other land manager, the Checkerboard Partnership really fell under the question of, well, why don't we manage this as a community forest? That's been done very successfully just across the ridge in the Teanaway. It's also right in the backyard of the Upper County communities of Roslyn, Ronald, and Cle Elum. So it's highly valued by the people who live there for recreation and as this backdrop to their lives. It's also very, very valuable as a fire buffer and a landscape that can be managed by the local communities between those homes and all that infrastructure and wildland areas which catch fire. We saw that in 2017 with Jolly Mountains, that the line was really held in the Teanaway and then established as a backup line on the Cle Elum Ridge. So the value of that forest, both for recreation, for watershed values, for habitat corridors, and for fire safety is really very high. And so that's where the Checkerboard Partnership is engaged in trying to find a permanent management scheme for this landscape.
So in this map, you can see the proximity of the Cle Elum Ridge to the Teanaway Community Forest. So the Teanaway Community Forest is that big pink blob, which encompasses a majority of the Teanaway watershed. That's owned and managed by DNR with a conservation easement with WDFW. So we broke up the Cle Elum Ridge into 3 phases, primarily for funding purposes. But essentially it's those purple blocks that are contiguous that go from Cle Elum all the way up to the Lake Cle Elum. And so currently we have received a RCO Recreation Conservation Office grant for funding phase 1 of the acquisition. And we'll be looking to apply for a new forest legacy program that has an infusion of cash for large legacy projects to try to capture the rest of the funding we need for phases 2 and 3. We really think we are on a trajectory to be able to get all this land purchased in one fell swoop. We're also working with local community members and other folks to put forth some private donations towards the acquisition of this land to match up with RCO grants. So we currently have 3.7 of the 3.8 we need to close out phase 1. And we're actively fundraising for that last 100,000 we need. And then that money will be used as match for this new forest legacy program that we'll be applying for here in the next couple of months. Oh, you were doing this one.
Doesn't matter to me. For those in the room who maybe aren't as familiar with the concept of a community forest, these exist all across the country, indeed all across the world. And they are all very different. They are tailored to the communities that spawn them. The only thing they have in common is that they provide a benefit to those local communities. They can be publicly owned, privately owned, they can be a mix, but they all are guided and managed with the input of local stakeholders, at least partially owned or managed by the local communities. There's a collaborative piece to all of the decisions made on these landscapes, and they're usually come with a management plan that is balanced across the goals of those communities. So if we're talking about Cle Elum Ridge, we're talking about recreation, about fire safety, about forest health, and about watershed health. So those are the things that kind of come into play when we're looking at this particular community forest. That may not be the same for another. But if any of you are familiar with the Teanaway Community Forest across the ridge, that is owned by the state, but managed with the input of a 20-person advisory committee made up of local citizens and community members. Up on the Cle Elum Ridge, we've talked a little bit about the services that it provides in terms of protection from fire, recreation, clean water, but also forest products and carbon sequestration are being studied by the Nature Conservancy as they continue to manage and restore this land. We also identify the Yakima Nation and the indigenous peoples of the area as part of the target community that these lands should be managed for as a community forest. There's a great deal of cultural heritage up there on the ridge spilling into the Teanaway. And it is a very important avenue for wildlife coming out of the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, Teanaway Community Forest, and then crossing over to I-90 to make use of all of those overpasses and underpasses that WashDOT has been sinking so much time and effort into constructing.
So we worked a long time on trying to figure out who's going to be the owner and manager of this community forest. In fact, we still, in a sense, are still working on it, but we have targeted DNR, Department of Natural Resources, to be that owner and manager of the property. They have the resources to manage 9,600 acres. It's right adjacent to the Teanaway Community Forest, and they already are actively managing a community forest. We looked at like KCT, we were the sponsors for the RCO grant, but our organization is small. We don't really have the capacity to really manage a landscape with 9,600 acres. We looked at a public development authority with Kittitas County to do that. And they had similar concerns. And we also discussed, can we develop another nonprofit? But that was just a lot of work. It just seemed like a natural fit for DNR to take over ownership and management of that, especially in collaboration with the management plans that they do have with the Teanaway Community Forest, with a lot of the similar characteristics and that we'd be trying to manage for with the Clay Elum Ridge. So there's ongoing work that's happening up there. So the land has been actively managed by the Nature Conservancy since it was purchased about 10 years ago. So there's been a lot of work with Township Teanaway, which is a project that's trying to link up the towns to the Teanaway through a trail network and trail corridors. The thought with Township Teanaway is make the communities of Clay Elum, Roslyn, Ronald, the trailhead to get into those wild spaces. So that way it could also drive some economic development and growth. And linking those communities up together as well as to the Teanaway Community Forest. There's also been active forest health work that's been happening. I didn't bring with me the map, but it's a considerable amount of those acres, particularly above Roslyn, Clay Elum, and now into Ronald. There's been a lot of forest health work, including commercial thinning, mastication, prescribed fire, and pre-commercial thinning. This was former Plum Creek land and it had been used pretty hard. And so trying to manage that forest so it can actually become a healthy stand, produce viable timber into the future sustainably, as well as creating an adequate fire buffer for the communities was important. And so that's a lot of the ongoing work that's been happening up there. So it has the whole intent of that is to create a forest that when it goes to the next owner, it's in a much better state than what it was when it was purchased from Plum Creek.
So at this point, we are circling back around and speaking to local leader groups. We came around and did a information tour back in 2018, pre-COVID times. But things have progressed quite a bit since then in terms of funds raised, lands transferred, and just the progress of the project and the partners. So we're checking in with folks, answering their questions, catching people up on where we've come over the last few years, and honestly, giving due credit to the Checkerboard Partnership for the sheer amount of work that they accomplished in a 3-year window, 2 years of which were under a pandemic conditions, to have raised about $20 million and transferred about 2/3 of the lands that we were targeting in 2018.
So what we're doing now, we'll be continuing to have ongoing communications with all the communities involved in Kittitas County. We want to get more of their input, making sure that we are incorporating those values that the communities have into our future plans as we look towards future ownership with DNR ownership and management from the local communities supporting that. We're going to work on the actual acquisition itself, going through the due diligence with DNR and making sure we're all set up to steward those lands in perpetuity, finding different avenues to create revenue streams that can help support that management. And, we just continue to do a lot of grant writing and fundraising efforts. That's probably the lion's share of what we have done and will continue to do throughout the life of the project, as well as once we get into the actual ownership at DNR and finding avenues for funding to do continued work up there. So today, just for your information, we've got $3 million from the Washington Recreation and Conservation Office for their community forest program. That's $3 million grant that is currently open and active. And we've raised an additional $700,000 to move forward with phase 1. We're looking for funding through that Forest Legacy program to purchase the rest of it. The Tainum lands, we've secured $14.5 million in total to get all of those lands in Tainum into Forest Service ownership. And that will be moving forward here in the next year, as well as the Forest Legacy. That was
6 million.
Yeah, I can't see it. I know it's in there, but it was between 5.5 and 6 million, and that land will be transferred to DNR, be managed as trust lands with the county as the beneficiary. So as you can see, we've done a lot of work. We're writing grants already. That's a pretty tremendous feat for Kittitas County. And so, we're here because we're all a part of this community in Kittitas County. we hope you guys all come and enjoy Upper County and the resources that are available there. But really, this is our legacy we can leave to our communities, and not just now and our kids, but 7 generations from now, having a working forest that continue to provide resources to our communities, providing benefits in terms of the ecosystem services like forest health, clean water, and protected communities that are resilient in the face of growing concerns around climate change, as well as, just being that place where you can go and get lost and find yourself in a place like the Clay Elum Ridge. It is really a gem to be able to walk up the forest and not see anybody for a long time if you don't want to, or walk on a trail where you can see people. But for me, it is just being able to walk out there with my dogs and just get lost for an hour and walk back down the hill. And with that, I want to say thank you. The one ask that I do have is we're writing a grant right now for that Forest Legacy program, and we would like to see if it would be possible to get a letter of support from the city of Ellensburg. We're going to be asking that from Clay Elum, Roslyn, and county and others. We're trying to gather those letters of support that we can put in with our grant proposal. If you guys are so inclined, we will get you a draft letter with our partners here shortly.
We estimate that it may be about a $20 million ask for
Yeah.
that second round of Forest Legacy.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what it is yet, but it'll be probably between 20 and 25 million.
Certainly, we've provided letters of support in the past, and we can, we'll look at what you sent.
Thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.
So just one more question does any of the council members have questions? If someone were motivated to contribute, what would they do?
There is the checkerboardpartnership.com is a website that's live, and there is a donate page on the Checkerboard Partnership. And they can also Kittitas Conservation Trust is running the fundraising effort. So if you don't want to donate online, you can get on KCT's website or send me a check we're located in Roslyn. Just make sure if you are donating directly to KCT that you write that this is for the Clay Elum Ridge project. So we make sure to put that in the appropriate bucket that we have that with all the fundraising efforts we're doing as a nonprofit.
Or just go to their office right above the post office in Roslyn.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
We are at item 3B. Pleased to acknowledge some awards presented to the Natural Gas Division.
Drew, can you do the PowerPoint instead? It's shrunk down on the bottom.
There's a PowerPoint.
Yeah. That's 2 strikes.
Oh, man. Why did I come here today?
That might have been my fault. Sorry.
Is it Monday?
There we go. Good work. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Drew.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Darren Usey. I'm with the Natural Gas Utility here at the city. And it's an honor and privilege to present these awards to you this evening. We've got 3 different awards that the system has, won this year in 2023. And I'll kind of go through that in brief, what those are and some of the things that contributed to those. But I did want to start by saying that, as a natural gas utility, one thing I've recognized, I've been with the utility for 4 years. I've got involved on a national level. One thing I've noticed is that we're really good at operating our systems, but not very good at telling how and why we do those things so well. So these awards, I'm hoping kind of highlight some of that for the city, because as a city, the city of Ellensburg, we've been doing things very, very well. So I'll dive right in. So the 3 awards that we got this year, all through the American Public Gas Association, the APGA. One of those was the Excellence in Environmental Stewardship. Another one was the SOAR Silver Award. That's a System Operational Achievement Recognition Award is what that stands for. And then the Safety Contest. And just in brief of kind of what those awards are, the Excellence Environmental Stewardship Award recognizes an APGA member that demonstrates excellence in their commitment to environmental stewardship. And only one agency wins this award annually, and this is only the second year that they have had this award. The SOAR Silver Award, this award honors distribution utilities that demonstrate commitment to 4 categories: system integrity, system improvement, employee safety, and workforce development. This is the second time that we have gotten the silver for this. This is kind of a moving target award, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the safety contest, this is basically just looking at incidents versus man hours. And so that's pretty much what the safety contest is. So the first two I'll talk about, the SOAR award. Like I said, there's 4 main categories. It's a pretty rigorous application. There's not a, so the one thing I want to say about the SOAR is it is not a standard application year after year, which a lot of these awards are pretty standard year after year. This award is a moving target. They've got a task force that reviews the applications at the end of every year. They really go through the application and they look for what are some of the things that we're asking that are kind of becoming standard and kind of becoming a minimum standard. And then they get rid of those, and that the idea of the SOAR is improvement. So the achievement here, like we achieved the SOAR this year, we could apply next year and actually go down to bronze, because it's actually asking us new questions next year. Are you actually trying to improve your system year after year? So SOAR is a good accomplishment. We're striving for gold. It's hard to get. We'll get there. So that's pretty much the SOAR Silver Award. And then the safety contest, like I said, is just it's really a simple equation. It's your incident rate in regards to how many incidents have you had versus how many man hours have you had. And we have had 4 straight years of 0 incidents. And I only say 4 because we've only achieved the award for 4 years. Prior to that, it was kind of hit or miss whether we were applying or not. So we have not had an incident in much, much longer. But we've been trying to apply for this year after year after year to be recognized for that, because it's important. It's a big safety recognition for us. The Excellence in Environmental Stewardship, this is going to be the highlight award for us. Just given where we're at, it's kind of becoming a hot topic with climate change and just with natural gas utilities and the emissions that they are capable of. This award, I'm very proud that we have gotten this. I went down, that was down in Scottsdale. I was able to go down to the conference down there. I was a panelist on a couple things and got to accept 2 of these awards down there. And one of the groups I sat with, everyone was kind of jockeying for this. So it's really a testament to the city and how we've done things for years and years. And I'll dive into that. But we have a lot to be proud of here. When I applied for that, there was pretty much 10 questions, and they were kind of long answer questions for that. And last fall, I developed a environmental stewardship program for our utility. And the idea behind the program really wasn't to create things for us to do. It was to tell our story, because a lot of what we do that is tied to operations and maintenance is directly tied to reducing emissions and being stewards of our utility and our community. So part of that program isn't just our utility. The city, we're part of the city. I mean, we're a natural gas utility and we get to tell that story, but we're also part of a bigger city. And so that played into the award as well. And I got to highlight some of the things we're doing as a city. And so here's just kind of a bullet point of the many things that we're doing as a city and as a natural gas utility. And since I represent the utility, and that's where the award came from, I'm going to go through some of those things in a little more detail. Operations and materials. This is, I kind of see this as like a legacy award in a lot of ways, because since 1956, our utility has only introduced 2 different types of materials in our system. And that's coated steel, which is also dually cathodically protected, which is not required if it's coated. And then it's high density polyethylene. So those are just the 2 materials in our system. And over the years, those materials have proven to be leak-free, which has been great since the very beginning in 1956. It's been good materials. And then I did want to talk just briefly on the EPA targets and PHMSA grant funds. There was $1 billion dedicated through federal funding. And it was specific to public natural gas distribution utilities. So that's us. $1 billion, and looking at what it would take to get those funds, we don't qualify for any of it. Like, we have done our job. A lot of it is for rehabilitation of leak prone pipe. I mean, so old steel that wasn't coated, that's leak prone because it's corroding. You've got a lot of cast iron. There's a lot of cast iron pipe, especially on the East Coast, that they're replacing because it's constantly leaking. And year after year, they're looking at projects to replace that. So in a weird way, I'm very proud that we don't qualify for $1 billion of federal funding because we've done it. So that's a good thing. And then leak surveys. This is one of the things that we do. We leak survey our system. We're required to do it every 5 years. We do it every 4. We've been doing that for a long, long time. So we're ahead of schedule on that. We're checking our system more frequently than we need to. And we're actually discussing moving that to 3-year intervals as we speak. So we're in the process of doing that. There's a lot that goes into kind of moving those boundaries and making sure we're still in compliance with that. And then just briefly too, over the last 7 years of these leak surveys, we've only had 2 underground leaks detected during those surveys with our specialized equipment. And both of those leaks were from moles chewing on our pipe. So our pipe's in good condition. We can't prevent the moles from chewing on some of that plastic sometimes. And then we also do additional leak surveys that's above and beyond what we're required to do that I outlined there. And then also in regards to leaks, I want to talk a little bit more about that, because really leaks are the big, the methane issue with natural gas. So when it leaks direct methane, that's a lot worse than burning it and putting the CO2 out. So with leaks, there's 3 different grades. This is federal grading. Grade 1 is basically you've got to dig in, you need to get there, you need to get it shut off, you need to get that fixed right now. There's no looking at that and doing anything else. Grade 2 leaks, these should be repaired within a calendar year from the date reported. So you could have a grade 2 leak that could be leaking pretty good. Per requirements, we don't have to repair that for at least a year. And we could actually downgrade that to a grade 3 and then pretty much never address it. And then grade 3 leaks are going to be very, very small leaks. And we just have to reevaluate those, but we could leave them forever if we wanted to. Our utility, we fix every leak when we find it. It doesn't sit for a day. It doesn't sit for 2 days. It doesn't get reevaluated from a 2 to a 1. And then we check it. We fix all of our leaks when we find them. That's been the policy for before me. So just wanted to outline that because the regulations really allow for quite a bit of leaky pipe if you wanted it. And it just depends on the utility and the manpower, but that's been a priority for us since day one. Yeah, there's a little bit more here. You guys have the packets. I'm not going to read every little thing. System valves, just briefly here. We don't have to check all of our valves every year. We check all of our valves every year. So we're checking those for leaks, making sure they're operable. This is a safety thing and an emission thing. So we're catching those little fissure leaks on valves. I mean, some of those valves, if they're not emergency valves, we don't really have to check them at all. So we're checking all of our valves every year, and that's just another way that we're stewards of our utility in our community. Our regulator stations, we have 2 regulator stations. We got the tap station and then the one here in town at Seattle on Seattle Avenue. Neither one of those systems have a relief as part of those. They're a dual cut. So basically we're reducing pressure and then there's a backup line. So there's no relieving to that, which is that's a common thing for a station to, if it over pressurizes, it's got a relief valve and then it just spews out the top of that. So we've got 2 good non-relieving stations. And then damage prevention, I'm not going to read all this, but damage prevention for us really is the main thing that we try to target. And because that is our number 1 threat to our system. We don't have pipe that we need to go look at and replace. We don't have rake stations where we need to look at the design of those and consider how do we get rid of this relief valve. For us, it's really damage prevention. And so we've been trying to ramp that up and find new and creative ways to do that. And that is kind of our main focus right now. And that's another thing. Odorization, this is kind of a weird one. It's just us telling our story. Again, we odorize at a higher level than most systems across the country. And part of that is we get a range. We have to do checks monthly on different sites, and there's a range that goes with that. And we're picking that range up a lot quicker than we have to. It's a pretty big range. It's 0.1 to 0.8. Not getting into the details of what that means, but we're catching it around 0.25 on a scale of 1 to 8. So this is really not something that we intended to be like, hey, look what we do, but this is something that we do and have done for a long, long time. And so it's just part of telling that story is we actually catch those tiny little leaks way sooner than we would. I mean, a fissure leak can be out there for years before we find it. But because of that, we generate more calls quicker from customers and we pick things up quicker as well. And then we also have additional programs that contribute to the stewardship program. We've got our leak detection repair program, public awareness, damage prevention. We've got a distribution integrity management program, and then underway is actually a pipeline safety management system program that I'm hoping to present to you guys in the next year. And so that's kind of just a very, very brief. I mean, there's a whole bullet list of things that we've done as a utility operating, maintaining our system. But that's just kind of a brief snapshot of some of the things that we've been doing. You guys have a system that you can be very, very proud of. And for little tiny Ellensburg to win this award over, there's 700 plus APGA members and everybody's jockeying for an award like this. And this is an accomplishment for us. And it's really just a testament to the legacy of not just this is our crew right now today that you see on the screen, but I mean, it's the crews before and after, and everyone's been here before us. It's been operated very, very well. So thank you.
Thank you. Council, do you have questions? Darren? Well, we appreciate all that you're doing and congratulations on the awards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, council, we are finally at approval of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agendas before you.
Consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thanks for jumping in, Sarah.
Sorry, I forgot I was on mute.
Motion approved. We are at 6A Board and Commission Appointments, page 98. And there was one applicant, or two applicants, one forwarded by the Civil Service Commission, Judy Pless, to fill the one vacancy there. So this is a council motion, right?
Move that Judy Pless be added to the Civil Service Commission.
Second.
Motion and second to appoint Judy Pless to serve on the Civil Service Commission. Any discussion? Oh, is there public comment? Is there any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. We are at citizen comment on non-agenda issues. We'll see if anyone has signed up. Angela Ling.
Thank you. My name is Angela Lang, 701 East 6th Avenue here in Ellensburg. Thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak before you. Of course, this is about Reed Park, Craig's Hill, and I have some questions and some information that I'd like to share with you as well. I started working on this because I've been here my entire life. I mean, my son was brought up here. I've loved Ellensburg. Craig's Hill means a lot to this community, and I wanted to find out more about what was going on there and to educate a lot of people that really don't know what's going on up there. So when I started, I decided to find out from the community what they wanted. And so I started up at Craig's Hill on rodeo weekend, and they let me know that they did not appreciate any major changes up there. And then I went to the community, people here in the community as well. And right now there's a small group of us who've been wanting to do, I'm going to say, I get signatures. So we have over 900 signatures since August 28th in opposition of the proposed plans up there at Craig's Hill Reed Park. I'm very thankful for you guys because the notice in the city of Ellensburg stated that there would be an open meeting soon so that you can hear from the community. So I thank you so much for that. I do have concerns about the fire lane that was not listed previously as far as a major concern. And looking at the plans, it looks like you're wanting to increase the fire lane as far as the width near the Legion, but not near the homes on the other side. So I'm wondering why, because I went up and I actually measured the street, and it's like 14 feet on one side. And then where you want to do the fire lane, change it on the Legion side, it's actually closer to that 18, 19, 20 feet mark. So it doesn't quite seem right because you've got all those beautiful houses on that side. And it's harder for the fire department to go up and service them. But I mean, you know what I mean? It doesn't seem quite right that the Legion would have to, you would have to do a fire lane bigger there. Thank you. I know I'm out of time, right?
Yes, you are. Thank you for your comments. Susan Wheatley.
I'm not a resident of Ellensburg, but I volunteered at the animal shelter weekly for 13 years and 7 months. I figure I volunteered for at least 1,000 hours, picked up at least 1,000 pounds of turds, and walked at least 3,000 dogs. And I am concerned about what is going on at the animal shelter. I stopped, my knees and my feet don't handle volunteering anymore. I stopped last November, but I stopped by regularly. And I talked to the young woman who's a nice young woman. I think she's doing a good job about the problems with facilities. They finally replaced a dryer after 3 months last Friday. There's a wet floor where something's leaking and the plywood's curling, or the linoleum's curling up. The alarm system has been broken since last December, and there's problems with the gate. And apparently the part of the problem is that facilities, the city owns the land, the building, the fences. They are responsible for the facilities, but it has apparently not been much of a priority for anybody to do this. As I say, the alarm system, and as far as the gate goes in I started volunteering in 2007. The gate periodically has problems and periodically needs maintenance. And so my ask is for the city council to make this a priority, that maybe the young woman who works there needs to have direct access to a contact at the facilities department versus going up through channels and down through channels. Because my understanding is just from hints and innuendos over the years, the police department doesn't really regard the animal shelter as a significant part of their duties, and it's not been a priority for them. So the other thing is there's some policy things that are going on. When I was there a week ago on Monday, there were over 14 animals there. Every single kennel was full, and they had 4 dogs in temporary kennels at the back of the facility. And that's asking for a dog fight to happen. And her comment is Ellensburg can't go around picking up every single stray dog if there is no room in the inn. So I think you guys maybe need to look at some policy issues in terms of dealing with the animals in terms of, because I know the Yakima shelter regularly gets on television and says, we can't take in any more dogs right now because there is no room. So you guys need to face that issue and say what's going to happen.
Thank you, Ms. Wheatley. And just so everyone understands, this is a time for you to talk to us and comment that our policy is not to respond. We can look into things, have staff contact folks, and potentially put it on a future agenda. But our policy is not to respond when people bring things forward. So Mr. Kelleher has signed up.
Pat Kelleher, 6530 Wilson Creek Road. I'm here to again support a sidewalk from the Legion to the water tower for public safety. If a sidewalk is done, you could easily add 6 to 8 more parking spots in the north end of the park. Improve public safety, get people off the street who like to walk in that area, get them on a sidewalk, and also provide ADA parking for the first time. The city sold Triangle Park, and the money was kind of earmarked for Reed Park. So there's, around $200,000 available for this currently. The sidewalk of that would be about $88,000. So I think it'd be a good investment of the Triangle Park money, and also a big improvement to public safety. It is part of the Reed Park plan, or whatever you want to call it, that the council remanded to the Parks Commission in March. If you look at the Be Heard website, you will see there's been no movement, no update on the Be Heard. The last thing on there is your public meeting where you remanded the plan to the Recreation Commission to mitigate the Legion parking. I don't know what's happening on that. You look at the Parks Commission agendas, they're not on the website. I don't know what they're doing. You could step forward now and improve public safety. You have the money. It's not a complex problem. Of all the proposals in the master plans, a sidewalk is from the Legion to the water tower are included. I'm not aware of one individual, one group, the Legion or any other group. I don't know how the lady that spoke earlier feels about a sidewalk. I don't think it changes it. It just makes it safer, adds some more parking spots. So I think we can move forward with the sidewalk. I don't know where the park situation is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on non-agenda items, topics that the city council has control over? Yeah. Danelle Miller has her hand raised.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fennell Miller, 605 North Anderson Street. This is just like an awareness thing because the council doesn't ever check this way, but as an outsider trying to use the website to access council agendas, I figured that you must have had a redesign recently because it used to be extremely easy, like one click to find the agendas. And most of you know who I am, and you know that I'm doggedly determined about issues. And so I was about to give up. I mean, it was like 5-6 clicks and I still wasn't there. I ended up having to call Beth Leader, and she talked me through how to find stuff, but she says it's even more onerous for her to get in from the interior. So what I would ask of the city is that the powers that be use a private smartphone to try and access this. It seems like maybe the designer did not consider smartphone use, mobile phone use. And I don't have any numbers. I mean, it would take a lot of work to find numbers, but I would guess that at least 75% of the public uses a smartphone now to access things like websites. And if it's not optimized for use with the website, for mobile phones, that's problematic. I know you guys have done an amazing job of increasing your public outreach and sort of information distribution, but this is definitely a hindrance as far as I'm concerned. And like I said, a city staff person sort of agreed with me a bit. So I just would hope that at some point in the future you could look into that and solve the problem, because I know you guys have put a lot of time and effort into public outreach, and it would be a shame to take a step backward, which I consider this to be. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Just for the record, we did make a statement, put out a statement on Reed Park today, and I will read part of that at the end of the meeting. So we are at business requiring public hearings. 8A, this is a closed record hearing for a rezone application. I have a script and a process that I will read. So the purpose of this closed record quasi-judicial hearing is for the City Council to consider the pertinent facts, applicable law, and to make a final decision on whether to conduct first reading of ordinance 4924, which would approve application P21-132 submitted by Matt Stalder, agent for the property owners, to rezone 2 parcels, including number 652733 from residential suburban to residential high, and parcel 712733 from split zones of residential medium and residential high to a single zone of residential high. I will now open the closed record hearing to consider for approval of the zoning change application submitted by the applicant. I ask your cooperation in the following procedure. This is a closed record hearing. There has already been an open record hearing before the hearings examiner where evidence was submitted and testimony received. Under state law, there can only be one open record public hearing allowed in this proceeding. This closed record hearing means the council bases its decision only on the record developed at the public hearing previously held before the hearings examiner. Only city staff or Matt Stalder, the agent for the owners, who already participated in the open record hearing on this matter through oral testimony or comments received by the hearings examiner, can participate in this closed record hearing. No new testimony or introduction of new materials or evidence is allowed. Comments or arguments must address only the record already established during the previous open record hearing before the hearings examiner and must be directed to the issue of whether the hearings examiner's recommendation should or should not be adopted. If anyone presents comments that are not based on facts in the record, anyone can make an objection. If the objection is made, the person speaking will stop until the issue of the objection is resolved. When you're invited to speak, begin by stating your name and address and indicate whether you are speaking for yourself individually or as a spokesperson for a certain group or both. Speak slowly and clearly. Only one person will be allowed to speak at a time. Any questions of staff are to be directed through the council. The city clerk will be making a recording of the proceedings. The city council seeks to conduct this hearing in a manner that is fair and unbiased in both appearance and fact. Therefore, I would ask the council members the following questions. Does any member of the council have an interest in this property or issue?
No.
No. Will any member of the council obtain a financial benefit or suffer a financial loss as a result of the outcome of this hearing?
No.
I too say no. Does any council member believe he or she cannot hear and consider this matter in a fair and objective manner?
No.
No. Has any council member engaged in communication with opponents or proponents regarding this issue outside of the public hearing process? If so, that,
Way ahead of myself.
yeah. I guess if everyone says no, I don't have to read the rest, but it's here. So if so, that member must place on the record the substance of the communication so that other interested parties may have the right at this hearing to rebut the substance of the communication.
No.
No, I also say no. Is any council member employed by a party that has direct or indirect interest in the property, the value of which will be affected by a decision in this matter?
No.
No. Will any council member be employed by a party for which the potential employment may be a result in the decision in this matter? No. Is any council member a member of or involved in an association or organization, whether formal or informal, which takes a position on this application?
No.
Not. Is there anyone present at this time who objects to my participation or any council member's participation in these proceedings on the appearance of fairness grounds? Seeing no one come forward, before we hear from the audience, is there a staff report to be presented?
Yes, there is. Good evening, council members, Madam Mayor. My name is Jeremy Johnston, the Community Development Planning Manager. As you mentioned before you this evening is a closed record hearing for rezone application file number P21-132. This application was submitted by Matt Stalder, acting as agent on behalf of the current property owners, Justin Bergener and Harper 20th LLC. The applicant seeks to rezone the subject properties from residential suburban and residential medium to residential high for the purposes of developing multifamily multiple building complex. Go ahead and just share this quick zoning map. Some context here. The map before you shows both parcels. The northernmost parcel is currently zoned residential suburban. The parcel to the southeast of the parcels that are outlined in white is split zoned. So residential high takes up roughly 3/4 of the parcel, maybe 2/3, and the remainder is residential medium. The applicant seeks to rezone both of these parcels to residential high zoning designation. Let's see here. The proposal would be to develop the site with 2 multi-story multifamily buildings. The residential or the residence in the northernmost parcel is proposed to be demolished as part of that project. The properties are bordered by residential suburban zoning to the north and west and residential high zoning to the south. And the properties are also bordered to the east by an unincorporated island with a future land use designation of urban neighborhood throughout the area. Both parcels have this urban neighborhood future land use designation, which accommodates a range of housing types from small lot, single dwellings to large scale, multi-story, multi-dwelling developments. This future land use designation accommodates areas close to the university campus and allows for residential high density zoning. The urban neighborhood designation is consistent with all adjacent parcels. Community development issued a mitigated determination of non-significance on April 19th, 2023 for this project, which include 11 conditions to ensure consistency with development regulations moving forward. The criteria for consideration of a site-specific rezone is set forth in Ellensburg City Code 15.250.060C as indicated in your staff reports. There are 4 criteria listed there. On July 10th, 2023, the application was presented to the City of Ellensburg's hearing examiner at an open record public hearing. The public hearing was noticed in accordance with Ellensburg City Code 15.220. No public testimony was given at the hearing other than the applicant, and the hearing examiner issued a recommendation of approval on July 12th, 2023, as presented by staff. Due to an ownership error in this July 12th recommendation, it was reissued on August 17th. There was a issue, the ownership was listed incorrectly. So that was the only change to the recommendation. So staff is recommending that the city council follow the hearing examiner's recommendation of approval of the rezone request of residential suburban and residential medium to residential high for the purposes of developing a multifamily multiple building complex on both of these parcels. Should the council approve the proposal, staff recommends conducting the first reading of ordinance 4924.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? And does he have any comments he'd like to make at this time? Seeing no one, does the staff have anything to add?
Nothing further, unless you have any questions.
And the applicant doesn't because he's not here. Council, do you have questions of the staff? Seeing none. Before closing the public hearing, I wish to advise everyone present that the council reserves the right to reopen this hearing for additional questions or take additional comments later tonight or at a continued hearing if needed. The public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Council may begin its discussion and deliberation of this matter.
Madam Mayor, I move ordinance 4924.
Second. Council, we actually have two motions in the report. Approval of the rezone request first.
Separately.
It would be best to do them separately.
The first one first. So Nancy, you go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve rezone application request P 21-132 to rezone parcel 652733 and 712733 to a residential high zoning designation and adopt the hearing examiner's recommended findings of facts, conclusions of law, decision, and conditions of approval issued on August 17th, 2023.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the rezone application P 21-132 and to adopt the hearing examiner's recommendations. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too vote aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move first reading of ordinance 4924.
Second.
Motion and second for first reading of ordinance 4924. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ellensburg, Washington relating to zoning and amending Title 15 of the Ellensburg City Code by changing the zoning classification of certain property within the City of Ellensburg from residential suburban RS and residential medium RM to residential high RH.
Thank you. You're welcome. So we are jumping to page 174, item 9A. This is a resolution updating personnel policies.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. For the record, Lisa Young, HR Director. What I have for you tonight is Resolution 2023-24, updating the Personnel Policies Manual for the City of Ellensburg. The personnel policies 7.2 disability benefits and workers' compensation and 7.5 continuation of insurance coverage require amendment to comply with the Washington State regulations and to ensure consistency across all policies within the policy manual. The City Council has previously approved the Personnel Policy Manual and all subsequent amendments. This manual was last updated November 7th of 2022. The primary purpose of these policy amendments is to comply with the Washington Paid Sick Leave Law, the Department of Labor and Industries regulations for workers' compensation, and to ensure consistency with our own policies. When employees cannot work due to a work-related injury or illness, they are eligible to receive time loss payments through LNI. The city's policy on workers' compensation has historically required that an employee use their accrued paid leave, typically sick leave and or vacation or PTO, depending on the work group, and when they need time off from work to recover from a work-related injury. They would then be required to submit their time loss payments from LNI to the finance department to buy back a prorated amount of their leave used. This has been a common past practice for government employers to avoid double dipping, meaning an employee getting paid from two different sources equaling more than their full wages for the same period of time. The Washington Paid Sick Leave Law has changed the way employers administer their sick leave policies. The law prohibits the employer from mandating that an employee use paid sick leave even when the leave qualifies. The law also states that workers' compensation benefits and paid sick leave are separate statutory rights that can be used concurrently, but an employer may not require an employee to use paid sick leave. Human resources staff have worked with finance and legal to review our policies and the state's regulations and have determined that our policies must be amended to ensure compliance. The amended policy transitions our previous mandatory buyback practice to a voluntary option. Additional language changes have also been implemented to ensure these policies align with our other policies, such as the inability to accrue additional paid leave while on unpaid leave, and to improve policy clarity. Surprisingly, I'm not asking you for financial additions tonight. Implementation of these policy changes do not create an immediate financial impact. However, the potential savings could be realized from a reduction in staff time spent administering a mandatory buyback policy. These changes could also limit the city's outstanding leave liability when employees do not elect to participate in the voluntary buyback option. When some leave is carried forward until the employee departs from the city, it is paid out at a higher rate of pay. You should have in front of you the resolution as well as the red line and the final proposed clean draft. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. The recommendation is to approve the resolution as presented.
Okay. First, is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on this issue? Council, do you have questions? Ms. Young? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move resolution 2023-24.
Second.
Motion and second for resolution 2023-24. Is there any discussion? Seems like we have to do it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too vote aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, item 9B. This is the dissolution of the Senior Advisory Commission.
Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor, Brad Case, Parks and Recreation Department. I'm here this evening to speak to Ordinance 4925, which would dissolve the Senior Citizen Advisory Commission. The commission's powers and duties are to consult and recommend to the council and other boards and commissions on matters related to senior programs at the Adult Activity Center, and to encourage and promote senior programs and activities, make recommendations to council regarding the long-term recreation goals of the senior population. For the last couple of years, staff has been looking at and reviewing really the effectiveness of the Senior Advisory Commission. We've had some challenges. There's been 2 vacancies for the past 3 years that we haven't been able to fill. The shift from in-person meetings to hybrid meetings creates some unique challenges with the Senior Advisory Commission. We used to host the meetings down at the facility, but with technology, we now host them here at the council conference room, which has effectively cut off a lot of the participation from seniors, who are not members of the commission, participating in those meetings. And quite honestly, a lot of the action items that have gone in front of the commission are more reports and not action related. And so kind of the meat of the meetings has been a little bit light. And so, we've been looking at this and reviewing and trying to figure out a way ultimately to better serve the users of the center. And we've looked at a couple different ways to do this and gather kind of the similar input, have more public involvement, but in a way that's a little less structured than from what we're currently doing. And so for the last 2 months, Caitlin Clavette, our Adult Activity Center coordinator, who is here this evening, has been conducting Coffee with Coordinator, which is a more of an informal opportunity for the users of the facility to get together and talk. We found these to have better attendance than the formal meeting structure, more meaningful dialogue, and have generally been regarded as having more positive outcomes than our traditional commission format. And so on page 189 and 190 of your packet, there's a table there that kind of showcases the current model compared to the new participatory model and how those two models are different. So it spells it out pretty cleanly on those 2 pages. The other thing that we'd be looking at doing would be adding a liaison to the Parks and Recreation Commission from the Adult Activity Center. So we think it's still important, obviously, to have the voice of the seniors participate kind of at a larger and broader level. And so what we would recommend there would be to do something similar that the DEI Commission has done. And you can find that on page 188 of your packet. But that's to create a representative that would be voted on by the Adult Activity Center users themselves. They would serve for a year and they would participate in all of the Parks and Recreation Commission meetings, bring information forward to the commission about what's happening at the Adult Activity Center, take information back to the Adult Activity Center that's taking place kind of at a broader level, department level, and just be involved in those discussions. And so, we think it's important to keep that conduit between the Adult Activity Center and the Parks and Rec Commission and City Council. The current members of the commission are in support of what we're doing. They talked about it at their August meeting and voted unanimously to make a recommendation to council to dissolve the commission and create that senior liaison position to the Parks and Rec Commission. Ed Bracken, who is a member of our commission or the Senior Advisory Commission, is also here in attendance tonight. And so, with that, the recommendation from council is to conduct a first reading of ordinance 4925, and either myself or Mr. Bracken or Caitlin would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, is there any public comment? Mr. Bracken, Caitlin, do you want to say anything? Anyone else? Questions from council? Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move first reading of ordinance 4925.
Second.
Motion and second to conduct first reading of ordinance 4925, dissolving the Senior Center Advisory Commission. Is there any discussion?
How does the voting happen? It's like someone says, I want to do it, and then there's a ballot and.
Yeah, we haven't really drilled down to that level of detail yet, but the idea would be, I think, similar to taking nominations and then putting the information out there to the seniors, and they can vote on who they want to represent.
And I would just add that would be a 1-year appointment. And part of the participatory model is that the members help make up the rules for their facility and their decision making. So how they do that vote, I guess we had talked about that would really be up to the members of the facility. And that would be for a 1-year appointment as a liaison to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
So like
that would
all
happen every year.
card carrying members will get some kind of annual notice of the election process, and that will be facilitated by staff.
Yes.
And there is no card carrying member.
Well, you have to pay dues, don't you?
You can join the facility. We have, anybody can participate.
But you
Have you been paying dues?
join. Do you have a card? That's funny.
I haven't.
She needs her own card. But okay, so to be a voting member,
Anybody who uses the facility can participate.
So you'll have all their contact information. I mean, I'm just curious how it plays out. Anybody whose contact information you have, you'll send them a notice.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, wondering if will the liaison position have a vote?
It would be a non-voting position.
Anything further? Let's see. We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too vote aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ellensburg, Washington, relating to the dissolution of the Senior Citizen Advisory Commission and Chapter 1.48 entitled Senior Citizen Advisory Commission of the Ellensburg City Code.
We don't do that very often, dissolve committees. Hope it works. Well, we are at item 11A, termination of the affordable housing agreement with Stalder Interests, page 191.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Heidi Barron Sternaway, your city manager. You have before you simply a discussion item. Some of this is for your past review and experience and an opportunity to weigh in at this meeting or a future meeting on parameters for designation of a future surplus action, or excuse me, not surplus action, but awarding for another affordable housing project at First and Pine. So a little bit of background is provided in the staff report. And if you recall, working with affordable housing is new to the city and fairly new to the city. And we've been in the process of establishing protocols and procedures over time. The First and Pine property was actually brought to council in 2020 for its first action. There was an open process to allow for applications that were vetted by the Affordable Housing Commission in order to designate that the state provides the ability for the city to surplus property for affordable housing. That application process changed over time. It was the latest project proposal came to council in March of 2020. And went through a process to determine what elements were built. The proposal was developed by Stalder Interests. Matt Stalder was the principal on that, and to build 57 units of affordable housing on the First and Pine property. Council took final action. There was a fair amount of discussion at the time about the type of housing and the fit of the neighborhoods, parking, ADA compliance, massing of buildings as well. Ultimately, council decided to approve a project that had 3 separate buildings with a total of 57 units. They had a variety of units available in those. And one of the elements that council recommended is that they wanted to make sure the property was used in a timely manner and built in a timely manner. So in the award letter, it was a conditional award letter that council approved on September 7th, 2021. You provided for a 2-year process by which we wanted to see action taken on that project. So as a result, an agreement was established. It actually took several months. There's a fair amount of detail that goes into creating the affordable housing agreements that was signed in 2022. There were very specific timelines that met the parameters that council established in September of 2021. And the applicant has not met those standards. And so administratively, we've been in contact with that applicant and had communications about the status of the project and proposal to move forward. The applicant actually provided a revised proposal given different conditions of the market. And the proposal was to build 1 building as opposed to 3 buildings. And in addition, there was interest in applying for affordable housing sales tax. Because the Affordable Housing Commission is the advisory body for council on affordable housing projects, we took this item back to the Affordable Affordable Housing Commission, and they voted that this was a substantially different project and recommended that the project be terminated. Termination is actually an administrative process. And so again, the 2-year timeline would actually expired last week, and we've met the details to terminate the agreement. So this item is coming before you with the opportunity to weigh in. We'll take the administrative actions at a staff level to terminate the agreement. But this item could come back to the Affordable Housing Commission. And this is really an opportunity for council to weigh in on, are there different parameters that you would like to see for a project and parameters you'd like to provide to the Affordable Housing Commission to consider in the process to move this project forward into affordable housing on the First and Pine property.
Some here. So in my discussions earlier today on this, I guess what I would like is at a future council meeting, maybe that's a study session, to have the Affordable Housing Commission come back to us. To me, the most important thing is where is the biggest gap? What is the biggest need in the city? And then we could potentially look at projects that would target to fill that gap. It could be other things, but I don't know if that's a study session or we can include it in a council meeting, but I'd like to see that before I recommend anything as a council.
I think it's a good idea. Is part of the direction you're seeking is whether we agree with termination or not, or is that a done?
That is a done deal.
Done deal.
The facts have been met to terminate the agreement. I'm at a loss for words tonight. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
As far as the session, I would agree with the idea of getting back. I know that when we dealt with this the last time, I didn't support the design because we were, as council, the consensus was to place a premium on density. So we ended up with more units, higher elevations, buildings without elevators. And I think it's a question not everybody agrees that more density is a bad thing, but I think getting that right fit. And I did have some issues because it was, as the manager indicated, it was kind of our first shot at this process. And I don't think we as a council communicated very well with the Affordable Housing Commission in terms of providing some guidance or input. So I agree. I like the idea of getting together with the commission. So I think we could, I'm not suggesting we take a complete departure from this approach, but we could have a little bit more discussion and it would be helpful.
I'm unclear what kind of guidance, what our options are. So maybe that, like the kinds of houses,
So one of the big discussions
Number of
was
units,
studio,
types.
1-bedroom or mix,
Cottage housing,
3-bedroom,
multi-units are all.
and we would base that off of.
What the Affordable Housing Commission says is the biggest need.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the conversation we had last time, which seems like yesterday, but I guess it was 2 years ago, was we were under the gun. The former mayor was adamant that we needed units yesterday, which we did. And the premium was placed on density.
we still do.
And we still do. We still do. So I know that that conversation hasn't disappeared. So I think we can work toward a project in some way. But
So like artist live workspaces could be on the table as long as it was, meeting the requirements of affordable housing. Just wondering.
yeah,
I don't know.
So there's actually state law about the qualifications for affordable housing. When you use affordable housing sales tax, it's actually 60% AMI, and for the property donation, it's 80% AMI. So as long as income parameters are met, and there are some other parameters within those as well.
So as long as the residents meet those requirements, the infrastructure can be determined.
It has to be
Right.
within affordable housing,
Yeah.
not.
But you're saying families, you're saying, like
Seniors,
studios,
who's our target? Yeah, up for discussion, but we could, I don't know, if we could look at the rules for artists live work, but
Or it doesn't, we don't have to call it artists. We can call it independent businesses or entrepreneurs or,
But I don't know how that looks different than an apartment.
me too. That I'm also curious.
I mean, you work in your spare bedroom.
Well, there's studios. there are
Acres,
different-
maker space, right?
Different.
And I think we're consistently, we're bound by our housing action plan as well, right? We have policy guidance on what we're trying to achieve within that space. So there's a lot of variability in there, but good opportunity to revisit it before we commit to. Right?
We don't need a vote, right? Consensus is that.
Consensus would be okay to be, okay, yes. So
Uh,
we'll bring an item back with the Affordable Housing Commission for additional discussion.
Could I ask a question related to none of this affects the council's previous action on surplusing property, correct?
That's correct. The property was formerly surplused. It's really the agreement for the use of that property will be terminated. So we'll be able to consider other actions on that property.
Okay, so item 11B, historic preservation grant extension request.
That Stacy left. She's back.
246.
Evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, Stacy Henderson, Senior Planner, Community Development. In your packet is a City of Ellensburg Historic Preservation Grant Extension request. The applicant, Nicole Hilderman, was awarded a 2023 City of Ellensburg Preservation Grant funding in the amount of $4,000 for exterior brick masonry work at 109 East 3rd Avenue. This building and project were deemed eligible to receive the grant funding, and as the proposed work is located within the downtown National Register and Local Landmarks District, it was also considered eligible. The attachments in your packet include the applicant's original proposal and scope of work and some photographs. And their scope of work has not changed. The applicant has requested a 1-year extension to complete the original scope of work in 2024 instead of 2023, per attachment 1. Previous council action, October 18th, 2022, the Landmarks Commission recommended awarding $4,000 for this project. And City Council approved this recommendation November 21st, 2022. Per the resolution 2018-32, city grant funding can be extended one time for 1 year by the authorizing commission. If granted, this request would be considered to be the allowable one-time extension. The Landmarks Commission reviewed this extension request at the September 6th meeting and recommended approval of the extension request to City Council. So I guess the suggested motion or action would be to approve this 1-year extension request.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one online. Council, do you have questions for Stacy? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve Nicole Hilderman's 1-year grant extension request for 2023 historic preservation grant funding to be utilized in 2024.
Second.
Motion and second to approve Nicole Hilderman's requested extension and approve the necessary budget adjustments. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are at the manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Heidi Berenstain Away, your city manager. A number of items are listed in the manager's report. There is an annual increase in our waste management agreement that will take effect in October. We also will be having the fall waste management cleanup days starting September 30th through October 7th. And folks with Waste Management Services should be receiving a coupon in their mail. If you don't have one or you would like to participate in the cleanup, city-sponsored cleanup to help haul things, contact our Public Works and Utilities Department, and we can connect folks with their coupon or alternative means to have things hauled. In addition, there is a public hearing that's set for October 2nd. As you recall, there's been a long project along the Yakima River, and which will culminate in a land exchange. And so we have a public hearing scheduled for your next meeting on October 2nd to take action to surplus some of that land. And we hope to have all of the agreements in place by that date, so we'll be able to take the final actions at that meeting or soon after. Awareness of a natural gas purchase that's in the staff report. And just a reminder that we've been working on almost a 2-year project to create and update our economic development strategic plan. That was a partnership with the county and the city, both providing funding for that work. And the goal was to really include as many folks as possible. And we recognize that the council adopted this plan, the county commissioners adopted this plan, and Central Washington University representatives, the president and chief of staff, County Commissioner Corey Wright, myself, and our Arts and Economic Development Manager have been taking that plan around and a letter of mutual partnership and asking people to partner and commit to implementing. We know that a plan is only as good as the paper it's written on, and really the actions that we take are incredibly important. So in your packet, there's a letter. We're going to actually clean that up. We've gotten separate signatures, and the one that's missing in your packet is from Rosalind. Last Tuesday, we received their approval to sign onto the letter. So this is all the boards essentially for our the cities and county in our county, and the economic development organizations, as well as our downtown associations, have signed on to commit to working together. So we have a kickoff meeting scheduled for September 28th from 1 to 3:30. That's going to be at the Foundry, and it's for us to start rolling up our sleeves and really working together. The underpinning and the secret sauce of implementation is really about collaborating and working together to make a difference. And so folks are welcome. They can contact the city manager's office. Council is welcome. And again, our goal is these are folks who are going to roll up their sleeves and get busy. And so if you're one of those that wants to get busy, contact us. We're going to make the table bigger, and as we work together to put the structure together. So folks are welcome to that.
So Heidi, just
yes.
Do you need to know which council people are coming in order to publicize the meeting as a meeting?
And so it wasn't intended to be a public meeting, but if council, and we can separate people into different groups, so you're not talking city business at these. And so if you would let myself or Cindy know, though, that you do plan to attend, we can make sure we have the appropriate arrangements and separate folks at different tables.
Thanks.
Super. And in addition, the mayor asked me to talk a little bit about Fieldhouse funding. So we've had a couple of changes and a lot of work going on behind the scenes, as our goal was to work toward being in a significant rebuild or a build of the Fieldhouse, which is a replacement facility for the Racket Center that burned down last December. So we looked at about a $25 million project as we were just, doing very high level design for that facility. Again, the intent is for that to be built at Rotary Park. It would be a much better location. Since that time, the city has secured with the insurance dollars in the range of $6.5 million. We have initiated a master plan process to locate that facility at Rotary Park. We have also worked at looking for expedient ways to build a facility. And so we've selected a group to actually start working with the 30% design. The more we know about the facility and the costs and the specifics, the better funding opportunities we'll have. We did apply for congressionally directed funding. Dr. Schreier's office supported our application for $7 million, and that ended up in the HUD Community Facilities Program in appropriations. That was cut from 7 million down to 500,000. Our initial 25 million funding plan was about 9 million from state and federal, and we have some additional time to work on those pieces of it. Between the city and a county, we were looking at about a $12 million commitment, and then some additional local funds to make up the rest. So we are quite optimistic. Again, we're moving forward with the design. We have funding for the design, and getting the design to 30% again will give us some better ideas about, what facilities, and looking at how we can scale that facility appropriately. We said we can only build what we can afford, so there can be ways to phase that. And we think we have a great consultant, and you'll have an agreement coming before you at a future time. It'll also again help us reformat the funding program that we have for this. And so again, we're optimistic that we can do this, and we'll keep you posted as we move forward. So we'll be seeking grants and looking for partnerships, both public and private, as we move forward. There's a lot of doors we haven't knocked on yet.
I have a follow-up question. So going back to waste management, and you're probably going to hate me for asking this question, but I've been told a lot of what you think is being recycled is actually ending up in landfills. Can we get a breakdown of what waste management does with the recycling that comes out of the city of Ellensburg and where it actually goes?
Sure. And that's part of the county's agreement with waste management to do the hauling. So yes. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. And then I have a couple more items to,
Nancy has, sorry to, on the waste management too, in those negotiations, is there any progress on developing a rate class for low income customers?
So we are just about to enter into a negotiation with Waste Management and for our new agreement. And so there hasn't been any additional progress at this point, but that's something we can consider as we move forward into our next cycle. Thank you. Okay, and a couple more items. The pool has actually created Sunday hours, and I forgot to ask our Parks and Recreation Director about the details of those hours. They are on their facility, and if you call the facility as well. So they do have some open hours on Sundays that just started this past month. And on your next study session, we had scheduled for action also adoption of the 2021 building codes. There are some significant changes to the energy code as well. The Code Council on Friday voted to postpone adoption. There are a number of actions that they need to take, and until March 15th of 2024. So that study session, we will change the topic, and that item will be moved down the road for future consideration once the state has some clarification on what those codes will actually be. And that is all I have for this evening.
Okay, that was a lot. Councilmember Boshaw.
Well, the Affordable Housing Commission, basically everything that we talked about tonight on the termination of the affordable housing contract that we had. So that kind of summed up our whole meeting this time. The library is doing well. She's under budget and doing quite well there. They've got some new staff on board, and they're very excited about that. And then I sat on the Senior Advisory Commission or board as well, and so I'm out of a job on that one, and that's all I have.
Okay, we'll have to find another committee for you. Councilmember Elliott.
Attended Centerviews virtually, and just a kind of kudos to Centerviews because they helped. There is a significant amount of money that moves as incident management teams deploy in Washington State, mostly for wildfires. Ellensburg has had some pretty big gaps in terms of businesses able or willing or interested, or maybe they're just aware of that contracting with federal and state government. And we had some progress. I did the South Slope and the Rosa Slope fires, and we had local caterers and local support for the incident for the first time in quite a while, comprehensively. That's a lot of money that travels, they pay very well. So thank you for the centrifuge. And they're in the process of looking for a new director. Planning Commission, I was unable to attend because I was at a fire commissioners meeting, and the fire commissioners meeting was primarily related to some further challenges that we're going to have at KICCOM. We're going to need to replace our director within 3 months. In the meantime, I'm going to play some role at KICCOM, so I can't represent the city as KICCOM's on the board. So somebody else is going to have to fill that role. Sarah. Temporarily.
I feel like you were looking at me.
Yeah, we voted.
You're there.
So I'll have to step off that board fairly shortly, and then stay off it until after that assistance is done, that piece is done.
When does that meet, Rich?
KICCOM is
Second Thursday.
afternoon, 1:30 in the afternoon.
Okay. So,
and it's going to be one that's going to be tied to some really significant ballot measure and strategic planning and direction on KICCOM.
is that afternoon meeting?
Yes, 1:30.
So I guess folks look at your schedule and just contemplate whether you would like to join that commission.
COG is next week. I will visit the animal shelter. I'd volunteer there. So I haven't been there for a couple of months, so I'm gonna go back.
Okay. Sounds good.
Puppy. Yes.
Yeah, report back, please.
Councilmember Goodlow.
Yes, I had a DEI commission meeting, a lot of excellent discussion, pretty packed agenda. The action that we took was to recommend our new member to city council. And I think that's scheduled for the October 7th agenda. And with that approval of that position, a person in that position, we will have our full complement of 9 members. And looking forward to having some really good work this year.
Okay. Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see, first report, our city council subcommittee for council funded grants. We've got that ball rolling. So Councilmember Wynn and I met last week, and Councilmember Goodlow was unable to attend, but we got the ball rolling. So we received, for that particular program, we received 7 applications, and we went to some effort to, in the request for applications, to indicate the total amount of money that was typically going to be available. And I think it was largely effective. That was the good news. Bad news is the total of all the ask was 80% more than we have available. But the good news again is only one application accounted for 99% of the overreach. So we're going to sort through all that. So 6 of the 7 applicants really paid attention to the fact that we only had a certain amount of money available. So we'll continue to work on that. I also attended the Arts Commission meeting in person, which was kind of the first time I've been able to do that for a while. I can report that the Arts Commission grant program, their process is well underway, and they've got it down. They really have a process. I would also like to report that, just an observation as a liaison, that Kelly Vandenberg is doing an outstanding job as a staff liaison, and they are really focused on their work. So good job Kelly just continues to really get that process rolling and makes the work of the commission much more effective and all that. And then on the 9th, I went over, attended or dropped in at the People First convention that was in town. So Mayor Lilquist there and Councilmember Beauchamp was there. And that was great. I would just say it was a terrific event. It was on campus and it was held at the Cirque. And I talked to some folks that were involved in organizing it, and big shout out to Aubrey Rigby over at CW Conference Services, because they really did an outstanding job in getting it organized. So I actually talked with Aubrey and passed along my appreciation. And she said there were a lot of people involved. It was great. The other thing that was great was I got to meet a lot of people. It was a statewide convention and they're 45th. I didn't realize the organization was that, longstanding. But we had a presentation last meeting, I think, from representatives, and I actually got to run into some of the folks. You may remember Jason Self, who was kind of the local organizer, got to talk with him. But beyond that, I got to meet some of the people in his support group. I met his mom, got to talk to her quite a bit. And I also learned, this is kind of interesting, is that the Self family includes one of our own EPD officer Self. So, I mean, the entire family has kind of taken Ellensburg on as their new home. They moved over from Grace Harbor area, I believe. But again, I was just really impressed with that. Met a lot of first-time visitors to the community, and everyone, of course, loved Ellensburg, loved being able to see the things. The weather was great, but also met a lot of local folks who were involved in this organization. And it kind of reminded me that a lot of the folks involved with this are not out, getting a lot of attention. They're just dealing with life, and I'm just super impressed with what I saw. And I was impressed with the organization. Their board was very energetic and engaged. So I'm glad I attended as briefly as I could. So that's that as far as council. I wanted to pivot for a second. I just wanted, your council's probably aware, I just wanted to acknowledge the Kittitas PUD board. You probably saw in the paper and maybe in social media, there've been some really
Whoa.
it's haunted. We're haunted. Now there have been some, I don't know the details really, but there have been reportedly some very unfortunate episodes of employee harassment, anonymous harassment directed to some PUD employees. And I just wanted to acknowledge that I think, well, it's clear that the anonymous harassment doesn't show a lot of courage, but I think for the board to step up and recognize and support its employees, public employees, was an important statement to make. And I'd like to see the city support similarly one of our other kind of fellow organizations that employ public employees. I just remind everyone that it's important that people need to remember that everyone in this community benefits from the services delivered by public employees. And that's enough on that, but that's all.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Miller.
I missed the Parks and Rec meeting last week. I was attending a work group, Creative Economy Recovery Task Force that was convened by the Department of Commerce, and it represented the range of the creative sector, including tech representatives from Microsoft to Twistworks and Twisp and local makers in Tacoma, as well as artists from Spokane. So it was a really interesting and rich discussion about what is needed to support the creative economy in different regions. But I think by missing that Parks meeting, well, I found out later at the Arts Selection Panel group, Arts Task Force, that we're called, for Unity Park. That I misspoke at the last council meeting, that the last event at Unity Park was not in September, but that demolition might not happen until January. So I just wanted to correct myself and let people know that. But the task force, the Arts Selection Task Force, met and started to put together the parameters for the call and intentions behind what the art could look like in Unity Park, both temporarily while construction is happening and also permanently. And I attended the last Landmarks and Design meeting, where we primarily talked about the demolition ordinance, which we will continue to discuss at tomorrow's meeting also.
Councilmember Wynn.
Decently slow week for me. I met with Councilmember Miller for the city grants program. He pretty much summed up everything in that one for us. And then the county lodging tax meeting was pretty standard housekeeping stuff. We're probably going to be getting those applications here pretty soon, so we'll be getting into that grant application process as well.
October's your busy month.
Yeah, that's excessively long on those ones compared to the city grant ones. But fun nonetheless, because we do get to give out money. So
Yeah.
there's that. Other than that, I got my meetings coming up later this week.
Thank you. I welcomed the People First folks to town, and just to add, Jason Self was appointed by Governor Gregoire and another governor to the state task force. So he's like a mover and shaker in that crowd. So and yes, they were delightful, especially the president of their group was amazing. I attended the ad hoc homelessness committee. So the Kittitas Valley Ministerial Association will operate the cold weather shelter again this year, and they have the county homelessness and affordable housing committee is expediting an application to fund that. So they hope to open mid-October. So I will be at Bite of the Berg tomorrow, Tuesday afternoon, and invite people to coffee with council. Which day is it?
Friday, 8
Friday,
o'clock.
Friday, 8 o'clock. Where?
Are you there too?
Friday, 8 o'clock
At the early
at
bird.
the early bird. Okay. Yeah, that's a nice venue.
Miller time at the early bird.
Miller time. Awesome. Okay. So just because Ms. Lang has been so effective at getting the word out about our project on Craig's Hill, I just wanted to kind of highlight some stuff from this media release that we released today. So just highlighting some facts that impact the parking and traffic flow. So there's really two separate issues, and one is the fire lane revisions, and that is to comply with International Fire Code. And the second is the ongoing Reed Park Master Plan process. So first, the fire lane. So compliance with international fire codes is required for all public and private buildings. And after receiving complaints about blocked fire lanes, the staff consulted with the fire marshal, and they are delineating the 20-foot required lanes. And as I understand it, for private homes, it's a different thing. And the homes are only on one side. There's plenty of room. That lane, even though pavement is there, there's nothing. The space between is wider, right? So, and I don't, Rich, there's a difference between a public facility or the Legion and the homes.
In base access, no, but public, your personal driveway doesn't have to be 20 feet. The larger the building, it can get up to 26 feet. This building qualifies for 20 feet of access.
Anyway, it makes a difference between. So it was determined that the current configuration was insufficient and would require new signs and pavement markings, which would reduce the amount of legal parking stalls along Craig Avenue. So the city did send a letter to the American Legion back in July, and we did propose an alternate solution that would retain those parking spaces along Craig Avenue, and that was rejected by the Legion. So taking no action to remedy a known fire lane access issue is not an option because of fire risk that it creates for the Legion and the nearby home owners in the area in general. So, second, the Reed Park master planning process has been several years in the making. We've had previous open houses, we've had surveys, all of that you can find on the parks website, the historical documents, and this is not coming from nowhere. So the city's interest in making the changes at Reed Park is to address longstanding, at least 10 years of, we've been hearing from the neighbors, how the park is used, and also to enhance the park experience for all of the Ellensburg residents, those that are walking and those that are using cars. The city recognizes the different impacts to the different communities as a whole, the surrounding neighborhood, the Fairgrounds Rodeo, the American Legion, and stakeholders from all those groups have participated in shaping the proposed plans. And all proposed Reed Park design options allow for some legal parking along the bluff, as well as separating cars from the pedestrians and also adding restrooms. The Reed Park Master Plan has not been adopted, and the next public open house to review the master plan options is scheduled for October 18th, 2023. The members of the public are invited to attend the open house on Wednesday, October 18th, here in the council chambers, 6:30 to 8. And we'll have the previous versions of the master plan design options, and also a new option that came out of the March 6th meeting, when we had members of the Legion here objecting to the proposals. So the community feedback will be incorporated, and it is a process. So we just want to stress that we recognize that the American Legion Hall is an important community facility for our local veterans, and we want them to be safe, and we want the residents up there to be safe, and we want the park to be a good neighbor to everyone involved. So everyone's invited to join us on the October 18th to review the plans. And again, if you want more information, it's on the city's website, Reed Park Master Plan at City of Ellensburg, be heard, or you can contact the city manager as well. So
I want to make one comment.
Okay.
When you're done.
I am done.
Okay. I was just thinking about capitalizing on the public interests regarding Reed Park, and how, how many ways we try to set up opportunities for public comment along the way. And I wonder if we could somehow, ask Ms. Lang if we could distribute some of those ways to the signers, in terms of, getting them signed up for the e-newsletter that we send out around our, not just Reed Park, but everything else that we do. I mean, if this is a captive audience, then maybe there's a way we could speak back and say, here are the other ways of staying in touch with all of the various projects. And one of them would be this great newsletter that we put so much work into, that talks about various projects. And I don't know, I was just thinking about the other ways of promoting Be Heard eBerg. So both the e-newsletter and Be Heard eBerg. I don't know the last time I saw an insert with, and we've done like utility insertions, and has Be Heard eBerg or the newsletter been promoted as an opportunity that way? It seems like one of our more direct ways of promoting those channels.
Yeah.
Is my
comments. And you can also sign up for news flashes and releases and if you're only interested in parks, you can just sign up for parks information. So there's it just always amazes me that you think you're getting the word out there and then people catch wind of something at the last minute and
We missed it, the whole conversation.
and somehow they've missed the last 2 years of planning. So
Just a quick go back, I need to likely request an excused absence for October 16th. Be traveling, I'll try to get on virtually.
So move. Second.
motion and second to excuse Councilmember Elliott's absence on October 16th if needed.
Let's,
Uh,
I got a comment, but not related to that. But-
So all in favor?
Aye.
I too would I opposed?
I was just going to add that I had in a previous council meeting requested an excused absence for that meeting. But I will no longer need that, so I'll rescind that.
Thank you.
It's- Yeah, you can use it. I've got a spare, so, or I want to save it for the fall. Come back later, sorry.
Okay, unless anyone else wants to head out on us, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Made good time. I thought by the time we got to read the